Hey, welcome back into another episode of Mindset Monday with me, Matt, where I share with you things that have helped me on my nearly 13-year journey of getting sober, staying that way, rebuilding my marriage, and becoming a better man. These episodes are things that I found useful and things I find interesting and things I use every single day that I hope can be helpful to you too. Sometimes, though, I'm just answering questions, and that's what today's episode's going to be. I get a lot of questions about rehab, like a ton of questions about rehab. From spouses and partners primarily, but also people who are entertaining the idea of attending one. And so I'm going to talk about a lot of the common questions that you guys have. Like, what goes on in these places? What are they going to show them? To what degree are they going to explore the family dynamics? Are they going to talk about the same stuff that you guys talk about? What can I expect when someone comes out? What can I expect while they're in there? And what is this whole deal really about? The various levels of care, PHP, IOP, inpatient, you name it, what to expect before you're waiting on one. Going to give you the rundown of my experience with all this because I attended a 30-day treatment program back in 2013. That's where this really all started for me. And I credit a lot of the tools I had, especially in those early days. When I say days, I mean years really, to what I learned in that treatment center and the tone that they set for me. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. Maybe some of you are entertaining the idea of attending one and you're on the fence and maybe I can talk you into it. And I get no kickbacks from any of this. I'm probably not going to name facilities because there's so many. Find one that works for you, but I'm an advocate. I think it worked great for me. I think it works great for a lot of people, but there's also a lot of people it doesn't really work out for. And we're going to talk about why I think that is too. Hey, speaking of treatment and care and everything else, our sponsor is Soberlink, and we've talked about it in depth about what this thing really is. It's a breathalyzer, right? But it's a breathalyzer that you voluntarily get. And that's what sets it apart, I think. A lot of times spouses and partners are forcing these things upon you, and it's tough. But I think when you flip it and you look at what this can do for you in not just keeping you sober, because very few people who are drinking this way want to keep drinking this way. They know it's destructive, but they also don't know how to stop. And it's tough because your words have lost meaning. And so the other side of that, you also have this relationship that's kind of veiled. It's like you're married, but there's not a connection there. There's a foggy lens between you and the marriage you really want because there's no trust. Trust is lost in buckets. It's rebuilt in droplets. And if you've been lying to someone, especially about alcohol over a very long period of time, your words have lost meaning at this point. And so voluntarily getting one of these devices can really help you rebuild trust. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can just do the right thing for a very long period of time and slowly but surely you'll rebuild trust, but we're talking years at that point, years with the Y, or you can expedite that process by getting a device like Soberlink, especially if you're a chronic relapser, if you're someone who does really well for a couple of months or maybe a month and then you fall off. Soberlink can be the thing that helps you start to rebuild trust. It does a lot of stuff, but first of all, it's got a reporting system. It's got an accountability group network that you set up with people who are supportive of your sober journey. So like your spouse, your friends, maybe a pastor, maybe a marriage counselor, a sponsor, whoever you want to know about this stuff that's going to keep you accountable. Because every time you use it, they get notified. And so if you're thinking about slipping away and drinking this afternoon, guess what? You have to blow in that thing this evening and they're going to know. So it's going to keep you from those moments whenever it's just tough, especially on the early days. But on the other side of that, you're also going to have people who are rooting for your success. They're cheering for you. They're going to be supportive of you. And like you need people in your corner. It's really freaking hard to get through this thing alone. And then for spouses and partners, like this is without you realizing a gift that you give them. They're so sick of asking and being lied to. They're so sick of wondering and searching for bottles whenever you're gone because they just want answers. They want answers. They feel like they're going crazy. Don't make them feel crazy anymore. Get a Soberlink. And since you're a listener of our show, Soberlink is going to offer you something they don't do for anyone else. They're going to give you a $100 Visa gift card rebate that you can use toward the monthly plan of your device, or you can use it on your bills. You can use it on Amazon, your electricity bill, your water bill, DirecTV. Does anyone still use that? It's more like YouTube TV and stuff now, right? Hulu and all that stuff. You could use it on your bills. You can buy Tufo merch with it, whatever you want to do, which by the way, sporting some new stuff here, a little sneak peek there. Go to soberlink.com/wheels. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Soberlink.com/wheels. And also, hey, remember, there are no more upfront costs. If you're in a pinch, if you're in a bind, like our finances were in those early days, $500 is a lot to shell out in the beginning. Well, they're not making you do that anymore. For less than $20 a month, you can now rent a device. You still have your monthly plan costs, but they're going to try their best to help you with that too. Go to soberlink.com/wheels. While you're online, hop over to tufo.com. You can check out all the free resources that we have to offer you. We've got a free blog, which I'm not updating as much because I'm doing these episodes instead, but I still write from time to time. And there's a bunch of old ones on there as well. A newsletter that goes out every once in a while you can sign up for by scrolling at the bottom, putting your email address in. You get notified of new blogs that are posted, new newsletters that don't always go up as blogs. We've also got a free Facebook community, and it's the best thing in the world. If you don't know where to turn and you just need some people who understand, they're there for you. Wheelies Unite, man. They are there for you day and night, 24 hours a day in the Tufo Facebook community. That's completely free. We've also got a Discord chat because Facebook did away with their community chats for some reason. I don't know why, but we've got a Discord where you can connect with other people. You can talk to people from around the globe. So someone's always going to be up. If you just need someone to speak to in the middle of the night, there's someone likely in the UK or something. It's midday for them and they're going to be available. We've got amazing wheelies all over the world. We've also got free community calls where people can, wheelies have their own calls and connect with a common purpose, and you can vent and you can talk and you can discuss what you're doing differently, what you're learning. You can crosstalk, all that stuff, man. It's people helping people. It's awesome. It's really awesome. We've also got a program that we built with a licensed therapist called Independently Strong. And this is how Paige really got through this. This is her experience of working through reclaiming her identity and reclaiming herself, because so often spouses and partners, that's what they struggle with the most. They don't know who they are anymore. At one time, you knew what you stood for, and then alcohol, drugs, and addiction make you compromise your values so many times, over and over and over and over. And then at the end of it all, whether someone's in recovery or you're leaving a relationship or whatever situation you're in, maybe you're just in limbo, you just don't know who you are anymore. And you need to reconnect with that person inside. That's what our program helps you do. Again, built alongside a licensed therapist, Dr. Christopher Taylor, who is the clinical architect of the course using social learning theory and how important your environment is and what we can do to influence that environment, even if you don't leave it, that could help you get to a healthier version of you. You can go to independentlystrong.com to learn more about that. It also comes with its own exclusive community that meets on Wednesday evenings, where we generally have a topic. Sometimes we have open meetings, though, where people can just talk. Paige and I, or both of us, are usually there, but not always, because life, right? Things will come up, especially during the school year. There's all kinds of things that pop up, and we need to be available for as parents. But we're there. You get office hours with us to email us questions as you're working through the material, and we'll be there to help you every step of the way using our own experience through this. So I think that does it for announcements. Let's get to this episode. This is my second time running through this because I'm talking to the camera and I look down and I don't see a red light blinking, which means I never hit record. So I'm sorry about that. And that's the second time I've made this goof in the last 2 weeks. If you didn't notice, if you're like a YouTube viewer, usually you notice that last week's Mindset Monday didn't go on YouTube. That's because I did not select the right microphone to record into. So all we had was the crappy laptop audio, not these wonderful Shure microphones recording this stuff. It was awful. And I have yet to send in the different files so we can marry the two, the video and the audio. And plus the camera went out after like with 7 minutes left, just because I talked too much and it's been overheating lately. So I know nothing about audio and video production. We learned all of this through the course of recording the show over the past couple of years or few years. And I'm still learning. So please bear with me and thank you for your patience. And I promise you I'm doing my best, but man, sometimes my best just doesn't cut it. Okay, on to the episode about rehab. A lot of questions from people about rehab, a lot. People who are waiting for rehab, like for one to open up. I think this is especially like in Canada or state funded type of situation where you have to wait for a bed. And how do you handle that in between time when someone's going to go? How do you prepare for it, as someone asked? Or while someone's in there, like what can you expect from them? Like how much of this material that we talk about week in, week out on the show is relevant in those early days? How can you best support somebody through it? What happens in these places? What's a typical day like? I'm going to answer as many questions as I possibly can using my own experience in rehab, because that's where it all started for me. I went to a 30-day inpatient facility back in 2013, and that's where it really began for me. And I credit a lot of the tools that I learned in that place that really were the foundation of my recovery early on. I think that I had zero knowledge of what recovery looked like. I had no examples of recovery. I had no education about addiction. I had no education about recovery in real life. And so I was, that was it for me. It was a really important part of my journey. And, I attended alumni events for quite some time after that. They would hold meetings up there, and you could go up there and you could talk to patients who were still in there. You could tell them what you were learning, what to look out for. And I stayed engaged with people. I would sponsor people because I've talked about this before. I worked a 12-step program, but all paths of recovery are welcome here. Whatever you're doing, I think it's awesome. Okay. That's just what I did. Disregard. But, it was really helpful, man. And I loved it. And since then I've been volunteering at a treatment facility between, on a rare case, I'll get up there once a month, but generally I'm up there 4 to 5 times a month, volunteering my time in these places with patients, men and women, with talking to, whether it be like a counselor's assistant or the counselors themselves or the administrators. I'm in treatment centers quite often, so I'm very familiar with the way that they work and the typical issues that patients face while they're in treatment. I talk to a ton of patients who are in there, and I'm going to give you my personal opinion on a lot of this stuff. Remember, like, I'm not a licensed therapist. I hold no advanced degrees in psychology or addiction recovery or anything like that. Addiction science. I am just a dude who's been around the block a few times. That's it. So take this for what it's worth, but I think it's got some validity to it. So we'll get into it. I think that first thing is first, rehab itself does not fix anything fully. Rehab is a start. Rehab is the launching pad for your recovery. It is not going to fix everything, period. That's the most important thing I want people to know. I think a lot of times when we drop our loved ones off at these places, we're like, okay, it's like dropping your car off at the body shop, fix them, and I'll pick them up in 30 days and we're on our way. That's usually not the way it works. It's just not. In the beginning, it's a lot about stabilization, depending on what you were using. And this is going to sound crazy to some spouses and partners, but like, let's say if you're a heavy alcohol user, they're actually going to tell you not to stop drinking. They're going to tell you to keep drinking up until the time that you check in. The reason for that is because they don't want anyone having a seizure from the withdrawal. So while you're in there, usually the first thing that patients are going to do, depending on how sober you come in, most patients are going to land in detox. Now, this is for an inpatient facility. Oftentimes they will have detox as part of their program. Most of the time it's in-house. Sometimes it's outside, then they bring you back in, but they're going to use a lot of time medications to stabilize you. So like if you're an alcoholic, a lot of times they'll use a drug called Librium, which is a really light dose of a benzodiazepine, and it prevents seizures. It's not enough to produce euphoria. It's just enough to keep you from shaking, from feeling that heavy anxiety and the sweats and all of those physical symptoms and some of the neurological symptoms of alcohol withdrawal, because it can be very dangerous. Like alcohol withdrawal and benzo withdrawal, the only 2 types of withdrawal that can actually kill you. Like opiate withdrawal, maybe you could die from some of the ancillary effects of that, like dehydration or vomiting or diarrhea or something like that. And like with opiate withdrawal, I've always said, like, you'll want to die, but you're not going to actually die. You'll feel like you want to, like you are. It's so freaking painful. But again, they're going to use drugs to help your loved one make the most of their time there. So a lot of times they'll use medication-assisted treatment. They'll use drugs like Suboxone or Subutex, which is an opiate antagonist that attaches itself to the opiate receptor, and it makes it so that you're not in just intense pain. And they wean you off of those doses until by the time you leave there, you'll be, like free from any sort of drug. Like you won't be dependent necessarily. Everyone's different here. Some people stay on it longer. Everyone's got their own protocols for what works best for them. That's between you and your healthcare provider. I was on this stuff for probably, I think they had originally set me up for like a week, where they were going to basically slowly land the plane rather than just letting me detox like fully, like without anything. And I think after day 3, I remember taking the dose and then going in to watch. On Friday nights, we got to choose a movie. And so like we had we had no TV, we had no cell phones, we had no caffeine. This was like rehab. Now they've gotten so much more lax on this stuff, and call me an old man, but I disagree with cell phone use. I disagree with a lot of the things that people get access to, because I think in a lot of ways you need to be uncomfortable and you need to be put into a very basic environment so that you can focus. I know that some people have a real valid reason for needing a laptop or something like that. They always made accommodations for that stuff for people that were like running businesses or had important stuff going on. But for the most part, I think you should be stripped of your shit. I do. I think this is time to focus. This is time to get your stuff together. Forgot where I was going with that. Oh, I was watching a movie and I remember feeling like that opiate feeling, even from the Subutex. And I was like, I'm so effing sick of this. I went and talked to the nurses that evening before the dosage and I was like, I'm done. And so I just gutted it out and I felt like shit for about a week. But during that time period, early on, they're going to stabilize you. They're going to get you off of whatever substance is affecting you physically and psychologically to the extent that you cannot function in a population with other patients. Then once you're out of detox, you were kind of put into gen pop, the general population, right? And at that point is when your care really begins. A day in treatment is oftentimes filled with a lot of education. You're going to be sitting down with like an educator and they're going to be running you through lectures. Some of this is on the brain chemistry of what's happened to your brain. Some of this stuff is about the psychology of addiction itself and some of the negative self-talk that a lot of people with addiction struggle with. Some of this is going to be therapeutic. They're going to talk to you about traumas. They're going to talk to you about depression. They're going to talk to you about anxieties. They're going to talk to you about the loneliness that you feel. They're going to talk to you about some of the stuff that you've never really addressed that leads to some of the use that you've had throughout your lifetime. They're going to begin to allow you to explore the nature of you in a very safe environment around some really loving and caring people and other patients that are trying to do the same thing. You're also going to get some family education, but this is where things kind of get weird. Every treatment facility is different here. I would encourage you to find one that involves the family. Some of them have like a family education program where the family gets to come in and they get to listen. Maybe you hear like an impact letter, both sides. Maybe you have some therapy sessions together. I think that is the most beneficial. Studies will even show that treatment facilities that have family involvement have higher success rates once you get out, because the environment matters and the way that you all understand recovery matters. Now, are they going to be having conversations like we have here? Typically, no, they're not. It's a lot to digest early on, right? Let's take this a little bit at a time. Let's introduce them to some of the stuff that's most immediate right now. My hope is that a lot of you are watching this stuff together, that you're listening to these shows together, because these concepts generally aren't covered unless you're in some like dedicated marriage counseling, unless you're in counseling of any kind, where you're talking about like validating people's feelings, where you're talking about showing up fully and wholly, where you're talking about behaviors over substances, you're talking about holding space and repair and all that stuff. Like that stuff's typically not taking place in treatment facilities. Some of them have even just completely done away with their treatment, with their family programs. I think COVID was an opportunity for a lot of businesses to sort of rebrand in some ways. And they used the guise of the excuse of COVID. And then without realizing it, some people just never brought something back. I thought about this the other day. This is a totally unrelated example, but do y'all remember when Walmart was 24/7? Like every Walmart was 24/7? During COVID, they killed that. A lot of times it was because they were restocking because they were so short on inventory. And so they would use those evening hours to like quite simply put stuff back on the shelves. And then it became a safety matter, right? We don't want to expose too many people. Let's limit the amount of hours that they're actually here. And then after COVID, they never brought it back. Walmart closes at like 10 or 11, like most grocery stores, and they open it back up at like 7, 8. But Walmart used to be 24 hours, and like COVID kind of changed that. In much the same way, a lot of treatment facilities stopped their family education programs because that involved what is usually a closed group, like a quarantined group, aside from the counselors who go home in the evenings and come back. They were undergoing regular tests, but they felt like it was just too taxing to have family programs because you're having family members and children coming up there on a regular basis. And so they just did away with it. And after COVID, they just never brought them back. And I think to the degree that people do have family education programs, 99.9% of the material there is focused on you, the loved one, simply understanding addiction. And I do believe that's important. I don't believe that it's should be the only thing that you're getting exposed to. I think that for me, the person in recovery, I needed to hear about some of these other deeper concepts. And I think that you can deliver that message without putting someone into shame. I think you can do it in a very loving way, the same way we do all other sorts of education when it comes to addiction. It's simply informing people, with love, though, that they've hurt other people and that rebuilding is going to look like someone not trusting you. And don't be shocked when they don't. And here's how you rebuild trust. And here's some of the things you can do to hold space for them and their feelings. Here's some examples of do's and don'ts when it comes to conversations. They don't do that stuff. They just don't do that stuff. If you have found one that does, please let me know. I want to know more about them. I would love to talk to these people. Truly. Like we've even tried to we have treatment facilities that have used our podcast, which I think is so cool, to get people talking in some of their family programs. They've even played episodes for patients. And I think that's so cool. We've had people who listen to our show who go to treatment and tell everyone there about the show. And I think that's great. I'm not saying I think our show should be like the seminal production for treatment facilities, but I think it's certainly a tool that could get some really cool conversations going. I do. I truly do. I'm not just saying that to be self-serving. I think that these conversations we have every week are really important. But from a family education program, like what can you expect your loved one to learn? Very little. In fact, it's the opposite. They're going to want you to learn as much as possible. And you do need to learn some things. Don't get me wrong. Like very few people that show up there like wanting to hurt you. And I know that a lot of loved ones can't help but feel like their loved one, like at this point, are you trying to do this? Like do you hate me? Like, do you just not respect me? And so it's understanding how addiction can arrest the brain in such a way that it's compulsive, right? And it's very difficult to stop. And it is important to understand these things, but it's also important to understand that there is a solution to those things and that it's not the end of the road. They're going to teach you about some of the trauma and things like that have affected the brain. They're going to talk to you about neuroplasticity and the neuroscience of what's happened in the brain chemically and how long it takes to repair. Like I know that you can look at studies on like methamphetamine patients, and they take some of the longest to repair, and cocaine, because that dopamine system has been so exhausted over such a long period of time. They can take upwards of a year to start to feel normal again. I know for opiates, it took about 6 to 8 months. Alcohol, depending on the severity of the addiction, can take upwards of a year too. And so they're going to teach you about all this stuff, but don't expect them to be advocating for you. I'm just trying to, I don't think it's fair necessarily, but I just need to just be realistic with you. That should be your expectation going in. That should be the expectation. And remember that your treatment facility is a launching pad for your recovery. Treatment is not recovery. I said it. I'll say it again. Treatment is not recovery. Treatment is a great place to stabilize you. It's a great place to get you education, but your recovery begins the moment that you leave treatment. And it's about what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis in the real world that really cements recovery for you. And everyone's path will look a little bit different. There are various paths to recovery. Just fix one, or just choose one. Just choose one and fixate on it and make that a staple in your routine. And generally life will get better. But if you get out and think that you're fixed after 30 days, you're screwed. You are fucked. There's no way that 30 days in a treatment facility after decades of addiction is going to fix you. It's just not. And that may sound like duh, but you'd be shocked how many people believe that that's the case. They get in there, they start to feel better. And once you feel better, you're like, oh, I'm good. I remember what this feels like. I got it now. And they get out and they do nothing differently. And within 60 days, they're generally back to their old ways. That's just the fact of the matter. That's just the fact of the matter. Okay. I think though, but like when you're going in there too, I think that if I had anything going for me at all, why I think that I'm one of these rare cases that I've got like, the first time you show up to like a 12-step meeting, you get what's called a desire chip. And it's a little silver coin and it's got a 24 on the back of it. And it's just, hey, if you want to try our way of life for the next 24 hours, grab one of these things. And like everyone who goes to one of those meetings will get one of those their first time. Most people have like dozens of these, if not more than that, because you try and you screw up somewhere and then you get a new one. You try and you screw up and you get a new one. And I got one. And I'm a rare case of that. But I think that part of the reason why is because when I showed up, if I had anything going for me, is that I knew that my way did not work. And I was completely open to hearing all of the advice that I could possibly get about what that would look like. And so I think that you have to be open-minded, truly open-minded. I walked into a treatment facility an atheist, very scared and reluctant to accept different paths of recovery, especially those that involved any sort of spirituality whatsoever. But it was in just being open-minded and just wondering what I could learn that I think that things really changed for me. And so I would encourage you to be open-minded about these places. And there's different ways to skin this cat. Okay. They have I didn't even have a choice in the matter. Paige and my mother had found a 12-step facility for me without me even knowing it. And it wasn't completely 12-step. I would say it was heavily geared toward 12-step. They did talk about smart recovery and some of the more cognitive basis of recovery, but it was very heavily influenced by 12-step. But I didn't know anything about this place. I was in Las Vegas. I admitted that I needed help. I caught the first plane home and I found myself in rehab that evening, like late at night on the steps of a rehab facility at like 11:30 at night. And I knew nothing about treatment. I knew that my favorite artists went to these places and they got out and they made good albums and good movies afterward. And I was like, well, there's got to be something to that. I should try that. That's probably the next logical step. I'll just go to rehab. That's what people, tend to do. And I didn't know what I had in store. I know that I needed to get stable. They did that. And then I needed to figure out a new way to live. And they helped me with that. And they give you some rope. They're going to give you some leeway to kind of discuss what in your life you need to work on the most. I know that we all come in with varying levels of problems. And some people come in with an immense amount of trauma. Some people come in with an immense amount of pain and shame. And make sure that you just pick whatever you do, pick a place that you think can cater to whatever it is that you know that you need the most help with. But remember, again, this is a place to get stable. This is a place to get the beginnings of an education. This is not your recovery. That's, I think, the biggest takeaway. And I think that for partners and spouses, it's very, very difficult when someone else goes into treatment. And I think one of the things that partners and spouses are afraid to say out loud is that why the hell do they get to go away for 30 days to like this resort and I'm stuck here? And I've got the baggage of everything that they've left me with and the pain and the trauma. And I've got 2 kids that need me. And like our finances are not in good order and they owe people money and they're driving by the house and like all that shit still exists. And it's easy to get resentful about it. And that is valid. I understand that. I'm not saying it's fair. It's not fair. But I think for a lot of people, it is a necessary step to the healing process. So as a spouse or partner, it is such a loving and kind gesture if someone's going to give you the space to go to a place like this to get help. Because I promise you, if the tables were turned and they had the opportunity to go to a place, your spouse or partner, where they could get away for 30 days and to recenter themselves and to do yoga and to eat well, 3 meals a day and have a facility with fun things to do, like they would do it in a heartbeat. And I know that some people go in there and they fight it, and they almost act like it's an inconvenience to their life. Guys, it is a privilege. It is a privilege to be able to go to a place like this. It is a privilege to have people in your life that give you the space to do something like this. So if you're going to go, take it fucking seriously. Take it seriously. Take it like your life depends on it, because it does. It absolutely does. Quick story real quick. I went in there with about 20 guys. They had a separated men and women, which is a good idea because there are a lot of people out there who have rehab babies. When you get a bunch of people who are freshly off of drugs and alcohol, whose relationships are on the rocks, and you move them into a facility and you let them fraternize, bad things generally happen. I saw a lot of improper relationships when I was in treatment. Something else I saw was a lot of heartache and a lot of heartbreak and a lot of tragedy. I was in there with about 20 guys and they told us, statistically speaking, in 1 year, one of you will be sober in a year. That's it. One of you. And one of you will be dead. And they were right. And it was my roommate. Well, I say roommate. He was across the hall from me. I considered him like a roommate. We checked in on the same day. He was a couple years older than I was, and he didn't make it. He didn't. He did not get willing to really try a new path until he was on his deathbed, hooked up to tubes. And I think he only made it a couple more days. And that's the reality. Since then, I've checked in on people. I've lost touch with everyone. I hunted down a few people that I know are still sober today. A couple of them were actually addiction counselors, which I thought was pretty awesome. And it was after several years of in and out, back and forth, struggling, several trips to treatment, that they finally did get it. And that's the typical case for most people. But there are, I think, 4 or 5 people that are no longer here that didn't make it. It's tough. Like, I need you to understand it is life or death. And so if you're going to go in there, treat it that way. Take it seriously. Look at this as like one of the biggest gifts you've ever been given, and take advantage of it and seize it. And don't be in there to bullshit and mess around. Not to say that you can't enjoy some moments. Like, I enjoyed my first moments of sober laughter in my adult life in rehab. And I found a lot of hope in that, because for the first time I felt like, holy shit, I can be normal and I can be sober. Because I had been happy, but I wasn't sober. And I'd been sober, but I wasn't happy. And someone was showing me for the first time how I could do both. And I got a lot of hope from that. And I got really excited about that. And we cut up and we had a good time, and we had little pranks and shit like that. But for the most part, it was work. When I was in lecture, I was asking questions. When I was in my therapy sessions, I took them seriously. I took notes. I did every single thing I was asked. If they told me to read something, I would read it. If they told me to write something, I would write it. I never complained. Even when I didn't want to, I would grumble under my breath, but I would do it anyway. Something weird just popped in my mind, but like when you're disconnected from your substances, whatever you're using, a lot of times you're going to reach for something else, which is why I think that some facilities do allow caffeine. Mine did not. I wish they had. Funny story about that real quick before I go to the other thing I was going to talk about with the nicotine. But they didn't allow coffee. And I'm like, you're shitting me, right? Like, I'm paying a lot of money to be here and I want to be here. But like, the drugs that you're giving me combined with the drugs that I'm coming off make it so that I'm falling asleep in lecture. I need to be present. Like, could I get a cup of coffee? Like, I'm a fucking adult, please. But their policy was no. But they would take us to outside meetings. So they put us on this little bus. We called it the druggie buggy, because all the druggies hop in the buggy, and it would take us to like outside meetings and stuff like that, or to some appointments if you had them, like doctor's appointments, acupuncture, whatever you needed to do. And they took us to an AA meeting, and I had some cash. I lost my luggage on the way to rehab. And so when I showed up, I had nothing. I had to use a toothbrush from like their gift shop to brush my teeth the first night. I had nothing. Paige eventually brought me a bag like a couple days later, the next day. But I remember I was like jonesing for a cup of coffee. And so they took me out, and I went to an AA meeting, and I had some cash in my wallet that was left over. And I stuck a $20 bill in the coffee jar, which usually they expect you to pay $1, maybe $2. You don't have to pay anything for a cup of coffee, but they had these pre-packaged filters of coffee. And I put $20 in there, which is probably the cost of like 2 boxes of filters, pre-packaged filters. And I stuck them in my pockets. And I was so scared on the way back that the bus driver was going to smell it and be like, who's got coffee in here? But they didn't. And so I took it back to my room, and I tore the little filter open, and I would literally in the mornings I took a spoon from the cafeteria, and I was eating raw grounds of coffee in the mornings, just chewing it and just chasing it with a bottle of water. You might be a drug addict but that was how I stayed awake. But another habit that I picked up was I started smoking in that place. And this is something I know a lot of spouses and partners find disgusting, but they actually kind of encouraged it, because they felt like, okay, there are a lot of reasons people shouldn't smoke or use nicotine or any kind of mood or mind altering substance, right? But let's pick our battles and let's give them something to cope. And so I started smoking like these like menthol cigarettes when I was in there. Luckily, by the time I was out, like I think I tried to smoke a cigarette like one time after I got out, and I was like, just not the same anymore. And I quit. Some people pick up nicotine habits though. I know a lot of people who started smoking or dipping or something like that in treatment, and they've never stopped, but they're also not using drugs or alcohol anymore. So like, I don't know, pick your battles, I guess you could say. But if it's a value of yours, then hey, you're well within your rights to be like, I don't want that to be part of my life or in my home. I just, pick your battles. But it's just something to be on the lookout for. Okay, so I've talked about the structure of them oftentimes, what you're doing on a typical day, which is a lot of lecture, it's therapy. Also on the therapy piece, not all these places are going to offer couples therapy. Some of them do. If that's something that you really want, start to look around for a place that offers something like that involves you, the spouse. It's important. But also remember that a lot of these therapy sessions are with LCDCs, licensed chemical dependency counselors. who are oftentimes in recovery themselves. And they're not usually people who are like well-versed in the Gottman method or a lot of the psychological concepts that you would like to address in therapy. So just understand that like what you're working with is generally going to be centered around addiction. It's pretty rare that you're going to find someone with a full, like a really robust background of like family and couples therapy. Understand that that's probably something that you're going to have to address after you get out. So use those sessions as you can, but I would also plan on getting your own counselor afterward. I need anyone to know that 30 days is not going to fix you. 30 days is not going to be nearly enough to get you where you need to be. You can talk to people who have been to treatment, talk to them about what it was like, and you'll generally get about the same. Places vary differently, very vastly in their level of like amenities and things like that. But for the most part, the treatment model has been the same for a very long time. Like the Minnesota model, which is the pretty typical model, which is 12-step based. And it's like, choose your flavor of shit sandwich. They're all kind of the same. They really are. Like some of them are really nice. Some of them are not so nice, but for the most part, they kind of like get at the same thing. Their goal is to introduce you to the 12 steps to get you out. And once you're out, you are going to get a sponsor, work that process. And really, in a lot of ways, the way I see it is that my treatment facilities, for as great as they were, it was nothing more than a big book that I paid $30K for, if I'm being real. Like, I mean, I needed that space away from my environment. I do think that that's valuable because I needed to be detached from my environment. I needed to be immersed in recovery. I needed to be around other people who were doing it, because when I got out, it was kind of cool, kind of interesting. I didn't feel comfortable unless I was in those sorts of environments. So I think that like inpatient treatment is what we've been talking about mostly here, but there's also different like levels of treatment. There's what's called intensive outpatient treatment. And this is for people. I think it's a great transitional form of recovery. So after you've gone to inpatient, you go to outpatient. This is what I did for 90 days. And it's like 3 hours a night for the first couple of months. You're going in the evenings. They work with professionals. So like from 6 to 9 p.m., I was going to inpatient. And really what it is like a 3 hour long process group. It's also some therapy. It's a lot of these recovery concepts. It's a lot of cognitive based recovery stuff like tools as well. It's geared toward keeping you accountable and keeping you honest in your recovery program. A lot of people try to use that as their primary form of recovery, and some do have success, but I think less than people who would go to inpatient plus IOP. But a lot of people will choose to do this. I know a lot of people struggle with the idea of inpatient because they have families and they have jobs and you can't get away. And my retort to that is always like, who has time for it? Like, who has time to go to treatment? Like, who wants to be away from their family for 30 days? Who wants to tell their boss? Like, who wants to do anything? Like, but sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to commit. And I needed to be humbled in that way. I really did. I say that a lot here, and people accuse me of being like this bro, but I'm not. I think I needed to be separated from my environment. I needed to be in a place like that. I needed to wake my ass up and stare at the ceiling and go, oh, fuck, I'm in rehab. Like, holy shit, where's my life come to that I'm here? I needed that, man. And then I needed to kind of go through the process, the pain of that, and then get optimistic about what it is that they were trying to show me. But inpatient is a lesser version of that. I know a lot of people can talk themselves out of inpatient for a million reasons, and then they'll go to outpatient and they'll really just half-ass it and they won't do much of anything. And it's like a bigger waste of time than anything. Not everyone, but that's just pretty typical. After inpatient, they're going to recommend you do a lot of things. Do every single one of them. Every single one of them. That's when your recovery starts. It's your aftercare. So if that's IOP, if that's extended care, if that's PHP, whatever it is they're telling you to do, just freaking do it. Do it. And you can be upset about it. I was pissed about it. I don't want to, I've been away from 30 days and I gotta go do this now. Like, this is crazy. 90 more days of this shit. I can't do this, man. Like, we were broke, but this is your life we're talking about. This is your marriage. This is everything. Your recovery has to be the most important thing in your life. Everything that comes after that, if anything that comes before that, you will lose that thing plus your recovery. I know that's like this old timer, like 12-step bullshit saying, but I think there's some validity to it. I mean, your priorities are where you were made of your priorities, right? Your priorities essentially dictate who you are. what you find the time for and what you consider to be the most important is like who you are. It makes up who you are. Your recovery needs to be the most important thing in your life. It does. To this day, nearly 13 years later, my recovery is still paramount. And Paige knows that. She doesn't love that answer, but she knows that because she also knows that without that, I don't have a family. We don't have a family. We don't have a household. We don't have companies. We don't have any of this shit without that coming first. So it sucks, but it just is what it is. Like the sooner you come to terms with that, the better you're going to be. And then you have to act like it. You have to put those things first. So whatever they tell you to do, just go do it. There's also PHP, partial hospitalization programs. I know a little less about these, but it's sort of like IOP, but you're going to have more time in a medical facility, much more intensive as far as the level of care goes. Then there's like sober living. This is like, aftercare version of it. For some people, it sucks to be a married man and then be told that you need to go live with a bunch of dudes in this little house and be around the strict rules and everything else. I know a lot of people hate the idea of it. I know I did. It wasn't recommended that I try it, but there are some people that are, and they recommend they do it. Someone close to me did this for like the better part of 2 years. I've worked with people that were in sober living for, close to a year, like 9 months, 6 months. And some of them will tell you that it's the best thing they ever did. As painful as it was, the best thing they ever did for themselves is to be in that environment because it's a structured environment. You will be drug tested. They will test you for alcohol. They will enforce that you have a job. They will enforce that you are attending some kind of aftercare, therapy, meetings, whatever it is they dictate. And it's awesome. It's awesome. In a lot of ways, I wish I could have done it. But I made it work the way, that we were able to, with the plan that I was given. But I did everything I was told, man. And I think that you have to go in there with that same idea that this is the beginning and I'm going to do what I'm told here. This is a place to stabilize me and very little more than that. I know spouses a lot of times have a lot of eggs in that rehab basket. And I'm not saying you can't be hopeful, but I am saying you need to be realistic about it. The statistics are not good. They're not good. Is it because the model's broken? Probably. That's fair. That's fair. Is there a better model? Sure. And they're popping up all over the place. There's a facility near us, actually. I know the owners, and they've got a really revolutionary way of looking at addiction recovery, from a medical perspective and also a holistic health perspective. They've got some cutting edge science in there. They've also got some of the older ideas about, community and some of the 12-step stuff, some of the smart recovery stuff. And it's awesome. It's awesome. But I think it's like, it's a buffet, right? They have all these options and they're just going to throw everything at you to find out what works, and they cater individual plans. But places like that are really expensive. It's a high level of care, but it's very expensive. A lot of times they don't take insurance. And that's what sucks is that like this shit's a business, right? These are businesses, and it's rough when you think of it in that sense, but they are. And don't forget that some of these places are out there to churn patients, right? Like they don't really care too much about the recidivism rate, especially if they're owned by, venture capital, because those are just paying patients coming right back. But eventually they will be thrown out as insurance stops covering those types of facilities because the recidivism rate is so high. But they've got really creative ways of manipulating their data that they show insurance companies. Anyway, it's a mess, right? I think that at the end of the day, you are a statistic of one, and your outcome is dependent on you. Not so much the place you're going, not even so much the education you get, but you and what works. At the end of the day, deep down in your heart, what has to happen is likely what you don't want to have to do. That's where I was at. I thought I would be unique and I would be special and I would leave that place and I'd be good to go. I thought even they would teach me how to drink like a normal person in there, that I would just show me how to manage this thing better. That was not what it was about. Abstinence was the path I had to choose. I had a pattern, and a decade plus pattern of not being able to manage it. What would change, right? Something in my brain had changed at some point and it was not going back, unfortunately. But I think that if you're going to go to treatment, follow that program fully. I think you have to find a place that whether you invest in this on your own or it's like, maybe an add-on to the program or something like that, or just a part of their program, that they've got a very good family therapy or at least family education segment, and then plan on getting some work afterward as well. Even if that's listening to these episodes, which are totally free. I think you have to start building a plan for aftercare and take aftercare even more serious than you took treatment. So whether that's safe housing, a job, community, relapse prevention, and all that good stuff. But don't expect one stay to solve everything, because it's not going to. It's step one. It's not the finish line. It is just step one. And don't leave your family out. I know a lot of people really suck at this. If you go to a treatment facility, how would you feel if you were your wife and you're off at this place with these people that you've never met and everything you know about the fraternization and the relationships that are formed in there and the anxiety that you have about, oh my God, where do we stand? Do they still want this to work? Don't leave them out. Do not leave them out. You have time on the phone generally. Paige and I had a blackout period. I think it was like 7 days, but maybe a little bit longer than that, where I had no phone. Except the first day I was in there, which happened to be my birthday. They'd let me call her on my birthday, just quickly to say hello. But other than that, we didn't talk. It was just about me focusing in on my recovery. Those conversations, share what's going on in your lives, keep them light. And the reason I say keep them light, keep them sort of surface level, is because in those moments, I think you both need hope. You both need something to look forward to. I want you focused on the things that are going well. If you try to have a conversation about some deep-seated hurt or some heavy shit, it's going to suck, because you only get like 10 minutes on the phone, and you're probably not going to complete that conversation or that fight in 10 minutes. And then you have the next 24 hours to ruminate on it, and you're going to ruin your next day. It sucks. Save that stuff for sessions. Save that stuff for some of the times that you get to really process from an issue from the beginning to the end, or even find a good leaving, like a good place to leave off, but don't try to have that conversation fully. It's not going to go well. And I would also say, don't ignore the systemic issues within that system, the family system, that home, whatever it might be, or your past traumas. Just because the substance is out. This is where I fucked up in a lot of ways. For everything I did right, I did fuck this up. I thought that I was never going to have to address the nature of me and some of the stuff that I had gone through when I was a child, and some of the stuff that took place in the home that I grew up in, and the relationships I had with people in my life that were influential, that weren't the healthiest. I thought I could just avoid that shit. This was me. I put myself in a little solitary confinement box, and it was going to be my recovery, and I wasn't ever going to address that shit. Emotions buried alive never die. We talk about that in the show all the time. It did come back up. I kind of wish I would have explored that stuff earlier, but it is what it is. It took what it took for me. I will say this also for family members, for spouses and partners, and a lot of you listening are spouses and partners. Don't expect too much. Don't get your hopes so high that all of your eggs are in this basket. Remember, hope is a beautiful thing, but hope can be a dangerous thing. If all of your eggs are in this basket of this thing working out, I'm not just saying this to dash anyone's dreams. Statistically, the odds of this person coming out of there and living a life beautiful, free of substances without changing anything are very, very, very low. It is going to be a total rebuild from the bottom up of your relationship. That should be scary and exciting. Scary because you may know as well as I do that your loved one has no intention of ever doing something like that. And that sucks. And we'll be here for you in the event that you have to reframe what hope looks like for you. But I think it's also really exciting because you get to start new. You get to start something new. There is this pile of burned, like smoldering ashes that is the old life that you two had. This is the new chapter. You get to build it however you want to build it. And it can be built like ours was on, accountability and transparency and validation and holding space for one another and support and I say accountability. Well, if I didn't, it needs to be said twice because accountability is so important for both of us. We both had to recover separately, but together, and understand what recovery looked like for both of us. I had to understand hers. She had to understand mine. I had to understand mine. She had to understand hers. And it became a topic of conversation in our home. It's important for our children to understand what's going on. Truly, the statistics around children that grew up in a home with addiction are not good. So you need to involve your children in this process as well. Let them know what you're struggling with. Let them know what you're doing to fix this thing. For as much as we want to guarantee that our children never end up where we are, There's nothing you can do to guarantee that, but there are things you can do to put yourself in a better position and them in a better position. But at the end of the day, so that they know that there is a solution and that someone can get out. If my kids know anything at all, aside from just, like, let's just reduce the chances that you run into a fucking problem like this, they also know that dad knows a way out. Mom knows a way out, that it's not all lost. So I think that's beautiful too, right? Like, you can break a window and fix it. It's all right. Not the end of the world. We don't pretend like this stuff doesn't happen, but you may need to, for some of you, you may have to recover without someone else. They may go into treatment and you're super optimistic, and then people change, man. I've seen this more times than I can count. And do I know the psychology of all of what's behind it? No, I've got some ideas, but it's all anecdotal and it's my opinion on things. But a lot of people go into treatment married with the intention of rebuilding, and they are feeding you a line of bullshit. Deep down, they have been done with that relationship for a very long time. And then as soon as they get permission to rebuild their lives, the first thing to go is their partner. And I've seen this happen more times than I can count, where the person who has stood by them through all of this is discarded the moment that they get sober, because they feel like you are a threat to their sobriety. And it's not you. What they're misunderstanding is that it's the result of their actions and the patterns that developed as a result of their actions over time. You have a part in this too. Don't get me wrong. Some of your responses have, played into their stressors or whatever else, but it's a misrepresentation, I think, for them about what the problem really is. They think that starting fresh is that's what's going to fix them. Generally doesn't end well for them, but it's extremely painful. And it is about the sickest thing you can do to somebody. But it happens a lot, man. It happens a lot. People will get sober, and the first thing they do is it's almost like a midlife crisis. They want to rebuild their lives. They want to find a new partner. They want to move on. They want to get divorced. I've been wanting to get divorced for a long time, and it just sucks. That happens more than I'd like to admit. That happens. For a lot of people that get sober, they think it's their second lease on life, and they think that everything about the old one needs to go, rather than looking at if they would have shown up differently in that relationship, and if you both would have learned some tools on how to communicate, how beautiful it could be. And some people are just, there is such a thing as a total relationship. There's a lot of things that people don't disclose. They go into places like that and they figure it out. There's also the other group from the other side of things. I was in treatment with a guy actually who was served divorce papers 2 days before he checked out. And there's a lot of people who are, in treatment, and that's when they figure out, holy shit, I have peace now. I'm on my own, and nothing's really changed as far as like my workload goes around the house. And I'm coming to terms with what's really happened, what they've really done to me. And I know it's something I can't get past, and that may be the end for you too. And that happens for a lot of people. As much as we want to say that everyone's going to make it, you're not. Some will, many more won't. And that's just the reality. And I'm sorry. We will be here for you no matter what your outcome is. No matter what your outcome is, there is hope. There is a beautiful life ahead of you. But as far as the treatment conversation goes, if you've got someone who is preparing to go into treatment, you guys need to already be talking about aftercare. You need to be talking about and having conversations about this, and understand that like their opinion will probably change once they go in. Try not to come in too strong with rules about what you have to do. Have some conversations, some real conversations, some loving conversations, some supportive conversations about how life can change whenever you get out. And this is a real fact of the matter. Both your lives will change drastically after this if you're doing this the right way. And they probably need to, and that's okay. Not a bad thing, but it is change. You both need to be on board with that. And for you, guy like me, you need to be on board with this too. You need to understand that as your loved one starts to strengthen themselves and prepare for the possibility that you don't ever come around, they're not abandoning you. They are taking care of themselves. And that is not the same thing. You would do the same thing in their shoes. And I think that removed from this problem, and if you do truly love them and you want the best for them, you would understand why they may have to do that. And it's not abandoning you, but the ball's in your court. What happens next is more up to you than it is them. In most cases, I would say. In most cases, but prepare for aftercare. I think that as a spouse or partner, you have to be really careful about not micromanaging that process either for them and whether they're in treatment or after treatment. It's really difficult. You can have some loving, influential conversations, I will always say, when you see something good, say something good. Positive reinforcement goes a long way. But also have your boundaries, and there will be natural consequences as a result of violating those boundaries for them. Oftentimes it feels like for you, right? Because you're going to have to do something you really don't want to do because, hey, you got to stand by your values. But don't believe rehab's an instant fix. And I just don't think that you need to hold out. Like, don't hold out hope they're going to come back like this version of them from 20 years ago, because it just won't. The person has to change, but I think that the system also has to change. Like, this 30-day model is silly. I think that it was originally established as a 28-day model based on, I think, military leave or something like that. It's like the most someone could be off of assignment without getting like reassigned. And so 28 days is an arbitrary number. It takes, we know, much more than 30 days to establish new habits and healthy habits. A lot of times it's like 60, 90 plus. Long-term treatment is ultimately the best idea, but who can leave for 180 days? Very few people can, right? 6 months, man, not many people can do something like that. But this is what we have to work with, and it can work, but it's going to be so much more about what you do once you get out of that place than it is what happens in there. Don't put too many eggs in that basket. I wouldn't put too much stock into your treatment facility. I think that all of them essentially do, for the most part, the same shit. For the most part, there are exceptions, don't get me wrong. But if you're committed to the process that they have in place for you there, you're going to be okay, most likely. You're going to be okay. But for loved ones, don't ignore your trauma or your pain. This is something that will have to be addressed as well. But you also can't come out with that day one and expect them to know what to do with it, because they're just not. Like, they're just now figuring out how to walk. My goal is to get everyone to the point where they can have those conversations, but just not everyone will. And so you're going to have to process yours elsewhere. And that's why we have free communities. There are also other communities out there. Find one, just find one that where you can work through this stuff, man. That's my goal for you, that you've been impacted, and your story and your healing matters just as much as anyone else's here. Let me go through my questions real quick. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I think that about wraps it up. Let's see. Is there anything here? No, I think that's about it. I think that covers it, guys. I think that just it boils down to expectations. And then once you've kind of got those framed in a healthy way, I think that you really have to start to evolve plans for yourself, contingency plans, right? It's tough. And as much as I want to say, just have hope and it's going to be okay and everything's going to be fine, it's just not for most of you. And I'm always going to be honest, even if that makes me look like an a-hole. I'm just going to be honest, because I do love you and I do care, and I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm not going to sit here like some, super happy-go-lucky dude that is just ignoring the hard reality. This shit is that very few people are going to come out of there and do what is required. Many more are going to end up in a place like this 3 or 4 times. I met a guy recently who'd been to like 50 something of these things, I think. He said that in total, he'd spent between 7 and 9 years of his entire life in rehabs, and has just now figured it out to the point where he's got like 6 months. So that happens. There are a lot of people who've been in there for multiple stints. And when I'm talking to patients, a lot of the times I get the chance to talk to them, and it's really cool. They're for the most part, very few of them have a serious plan about what they're going to do when they get out. Their plan is to get back home to the family and just try to be better. That's what most of them are going to do. That's a red flag. You're going to need a plan. You're going to need a plan for what's going to change. Social learning theory teaches us that if we go back into our same environment while changing nothing, we will generally get the same result. It is a matter of that environment changing, and no one can affect that environment more than me, the person who is in the environment. It's about where I put myself and the boundaries and guardrails I put around myself. It is also about the family and the support you have there and the boundaries that you have there. This is a group effort if you're going to rebuild it as a family. And you've got to understand that. Very, very, very few people have an understanding of that. And I do my best to nudge them along the way. But I would say in general, most people in treatment are pretty apathetic. And there's just not a lot of enthusiasm for recovery. There are some that are incredibly enthusiastic, but that's also not a marker that someone's going to do well when they get out. People will surprise you. And the ones that you think, oh God, that guy's going to be back here in a month, will be sober in 5 years. And the guy who was gung-ho committed faltered out of the gate and never found his way back. But I would say in general, red flag if someone's just generally apathetic and pretty unfazed by the fact that they were just in treatment and something has to change in their life. But I think that, let's say you've got someone in there call to action for spouse or partner, I think that you need to pick one boundary this week that you will set, or one education that you will complete, whether that's our program or some other form of that, one support that you will ask for. Something. Advocate for yourself is what I'm saying. Learn how to do that. Get familiar with doing that. For someone who's like me, the person who's going to treatment or thinking about treatment, likely if you're in treatment, you shouldn't be listening to this. I don't know why you have your phone like that, but if they let you listen to me for whatever reason, decide today what you will be doing differently the moment that you get out of there. Do not stop what you have started. Remember, recovery really starts the moment you get out. Sorry, I'm trying to get remember out of my mouth and I just growled instead. I don't know what the fuck that was. But rehab isn't just about stopping the use. This is about resetting your life. This is a reset. This is a reset for you, for your family. This is a reset for all of your systems to get back online. And remember, your loved ones may feel a little resentful, and that is understandable. I think they can hold two thoughts at once while understanding that A, it is necessary that you are there, and B, that it is also painful that you get to go to this place to work on you when they also have their own problems. It's okay. Hold space for that, man. At the end of the day, generally the former is the one that takes charge here, that they understand this is a necessary part of it. And is it fair? Nope. But this is just one more sacrifice that spouses and partners make so that we can live useful lives again. And I can't thank my wife enough for it, truly. The sacrifices that she's made, it chokes me up, man, sitting here thinking about it. What she's had to give up for me just to get well, and for me to get my shit together, and putting her life on hold for me. God, I'll never be able to repay that, but I'm doing my best every single day. I'm still trying. So going to rehab is not going to fix everything, but I think that if it's a broken system in a lot of ways, but if leaving rehab with that same system will guarantee one thing, is that you will check in again. So make your system better, even if we can't fix the system, make the family system better. And that is up to you. This is your job now. And I hope you can carry this and do something useful with your time there. If you're going to be going to one of these places, I truly hope that you make the best of it. I hope that you can serve that commitment with the honor and the recognition that it deserves. This is about you and your health. This is about your life. And it's also about your loved ones. So sending you all the best if you're in this position. And I hope that something I've offered you has given you some insight. I'll have more stories for this some other time, maybe like more lighthearted version of this, because treatment I learned a lot of stuff there. I had some good times. I learned a lot of shit. It was cool, but it was also somber in a lot of ways. But more than anything, for this hour, I wanted to just be able to educate you on what to expect, what you do when you're in there, and especially what you do when you get out. So I hope it's been helpful. Also, we're going to be changing the cadence of our podcast. This week, you're going to get 3 full episodes. And then, especially for the holidays, we're going to alternate between Monday and Friday episodes and Wednesday episodes. So some weeks you'll get 2, some weeks you'll get 1, but you won't be getting 3 for a little while, unless we're just feeling up to it. With the holidays, there's a lot more. We want to be present. We want to be present in our kids' lives. And, business has been nuts here for me. There's a lot of time spent in that. We won an award, like a very prestigious award, which is awesome. Putting in a lot of hard work outside of here that you guys will never see in like my professional life. And this is incredibly important to us, but so are our children during these times and the holidays. It's incredibly important to us that they have memories of mom and dad being around and being wholly present and talking about things that aren't our content. Just being mom and dad. And for each other, just being husband and wife. And so it's not that we don't love you guys, but just like you guys, we've got to find balance sometimes, and doesn't mean that we'll be doing this forever. Maybe, I don't know, but hope we stick around regardless. I think that if anything, it'll probably help us focus on better, more quality content rather than a quantity of content. So until next time, that's all I've got. I appreciate you. I'll see you.